Welcome, scholars, to today's fifth grade reading lesson. Let's get started. All right, scholars, before we get started today, let's make sure we have all of our materials ready so we are set up for success. The first thing you'll need today is your reading textbook. The next thing you'll need is your reader's journal. You'll need your response sheet. And as always, a pen or a pencil, your favorite writing utensil. Now, once you have your materials, I want you to repeat after me. I am ready to learn when my mic is off until it is my turn to speak. I am ready to learn when my materials are in my learning space. I am ready to learn when I do not take pictures or record during the meetings. I promise TikTok will be there later. And I am ready to learn when I will respect my classmates and I will respect my learning time. So we have our things, we've set our norms. Let's get started. All right, let's take a look at this week's first new vocabulary word. Our word on the board is broken up into 4 syllables. So show me your 4 fingers and let's sound it out. Mysterious, mysterious. And something that is mysterious is something that is not fully understood or explainable. Nobody knows what is in the mysterious box. Go ahead now in your notebook. I want you to come up with your own sentence using the word mysterious. Our next vocabulary word is broken up into 2 syllables. So show me your 2 syllable fingers. And let's sound it out. Matted, matted. And something that is matted is a tangled mess. For example, the dog's fur was so matted that we had to shave the dog. Matted. Go ahead now. In your notebook, I want you to use the word matted in your own sentence. Our next vocabulary word is broken up into 2 syllables also. So show me your 2 fingers again. And let's sound it out. Tendrils, tendrils. And tendrils of plants are long, thin sections that often twist around an object or another plant. The plant had long tendrils that wrapped around the other plant. Go ahead now. In your notebook, I want you to use the word tendrils in your own sentence. Our next vocabulary word is broken up into 3 syllables. So show me your 3 fingers. And let's sound it out. Fastenings, fastenings. And a fastening is something that attaches objects to other things. For example, Dad repaired the fastenings that attached the door to the frame. All right, in your notebook, I want you now to use the word fastenings in your own sentence. And our last vocabulary word for this week is broken up into 4 syllables. So show me your 4 fingers. And let's sound it out. Awakening, awakening. And if you are awakening someone, that means you are waking him or her up from sleep. The child began awakening at sunrise. Go ahead now. In your notebook, I want you to come up with your own sentence using the word awakening. All right, let's take a look at today's reading objective. Our learning goal for today: I am learning to create mental images when reading a fictional text to deepen my understanding. I'll know I can do this when I can accurately picture in my mind what I read, hear, or view in a text. And I can create mental images by using details related to the 5 senses to visualize what is being described. And you'll demonstrate your learning by describing how details create mental images when reading a fictional text. Let's get started. Let's look at the title of this text and the illustration. This week, we will read an excerpt from The Secret Garden. An excerpt is a portion of a longer story. This story is about a young girl's quest to enter a walled garden hidden from sight for 10 years. Now, think about the genre. The Secret Garden is a type of fiction called realistic fiction. Realistic fiction tells a story about characters and events that could exist in real life. Authors of realistic fiction bring their stories to life through believable plot events, and character actions. Realistic fiction includes characters that behave, think, and speak like real people would. It is also set in a place that seems real. Authors of realistic fiction might use third-person point of view. The Secret Garden also has elements of fantasy, things that cannot happen in the real world. Elements of fantasy include unusual creatures or characters with unusual abilities, and often settings that we would not find in the real world. As we read fiction text, we keep our thinking jobs in mind. Remember, good readers ask themselves, what is the conflict and resolution? What are the key events? We'll use our annotation checklist as we go to make sure we track the conflict, resolution, key events, as well as details related to the 5 senses. Remember, our learning objective for today is being able to visualize, creating those mental images in our minds as we read. Because remember, good readers use all 5 senses: sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch to visualize or see parts of a story. When reading fantasies and other fiction, good readers use their senses to create pictures in their mind that make the story come alive. Authors use vivid adjectives to describe nouns. Vivid adjectives help readers paint a picture in their mind and visualize parts of a story. As you read, ask yourself the following questions to help you visualize what you've read. As I read this, what do I see in my mind? If I were a character in the story, what would I smell? What would I hear? If I were in the story, what would I taste right now? And if I were a character in the story, what would I feel now? I'm going to tell you a story. As I read the story, I want you to visualize what you see, what you would smell, taste, and feel if you were a character in the story. It was a sunny day around noon at Brightside Elementary. Miss Smith walked down the ramp that led her into the school's cafeteria. Before she walked through the cafeteria door, she heard roars of laughter and a few screams. As she entered the door, not only did the scent of tomato sauce and cheese fill the room, she felt something slippery under her feet. As she walked around, there were remnants of crust on the students' trays. What were some of the pictures in your mind that you visualized, the sights, the smells you might have smelled, or what you might have heard taste, or maybe even felt. And remember, our goal as readers is to create those mental images, because when we create mental images, it deepens our understanding. We will continue practicing our visualization as we read the excerpt from The Secret Garden. Remember to refer back to our anchor chart as necessary to help you with visualizing. Let's begin. All right, students, for today, we will listen to The Secret Garden. Remember, as we are reading, let's use our thinking jobs to help us understand and comprehend the story. Who is the main character? What do I see in my mind? And what are the key events? Let's look at the questions on our slide. Who are the characters in the story? Where do the events take place? And what are they doing when the story begins? Remember, as I think out loud, I want you to listen for the steps I take and the questions I ask myself to help me comprehend the text. When I am done reading, we will revisit these questions. When I read, I pay attention to the sensory details so I can visualize the characters and setting, almost as if I'm making a movie in my mind. Sensory details are those that appeal to the reader's sense of smell, sound, touch, taste, and sight. Let's look again at paragraph 1. 10-year-old orphan Mary Lennox has recently moved from India to her uncle's mansion in England. Mary has made a few friends at the mansion, including the gardener, Ben Weatherstaff, and a friendly Robin, who often keeps Ben company. She has also discovered a mysterious, walled-off garden that's been abandoned for 10 years. Mary would love to get inside this secret garden, but hasn't been able to find an entrance. The day before, however, she found an old key half buried in the dirt. Who are the characters that are introduced to me in paragraph 1? Well, I know from my reading that my character is Mary Lennox, a 10-year-old girl. I also have Ben Weatherstaff, a gardener, and a robin. Let's look at our second question. Where do the events take place? Again, in paragraph 1, I read about the events taking place in the gardens of a mansion in England. Let's go and continue reading paragraph 2. The skipping rope was a wonderful thing. She counted and skipped and skipped and counted until her cheeks were quite red, and she was more interested than she had ever been since she was born. The sun was shining and a little wind was blowing, not a rough wind, but one which came in delightful little gusts and brought a fresh scent of newly turned earth with it. She skipped round the fountain garden and up one walk and down another. She skipped at last into the kitchen garden and saw Ben Weatherstaff digging and talking to his robin, which was hopping about him. She skipped down the walk toward him. He lifted his head and looked at her with a curious expression. She had wondered if he would notice her. She really wanted him to see her skip. In paragraph 2, I read how Mary's cheeks were quite red and that she is skipping round the fountain, which helps me imagine what Mary and the garden looked like. I also remember reading that the sun was shining and a little wind was blowing, which helps me picture what the weather looked and felt like. And finally, I remember reading how the wind brought a fresh scent of newly turned earth with it. I can really picture the smells, sight, and sounds of the scene as I was reading. Let's look at our third question. What are our characters doing when the story begins? Mary, at the beginning of our story, is skipping rope. The gardener is digging and talking to his robin, and the robin is hopping around the gardener. Let's continue reading paragraph 3. Mary skipped round all the gardens and round the orchard, resting every few minutes. At length, she went to her own special walk. She made up her mind to try to skip the whole length of it. It was a good long skip, and she began slowly. But before she had gone halfway down the path, she was so hot and breathless that she was obliged to stop. She did not mind much because she had already counted up to 30. She stopped with a little laugh of pleasure. There, lo and behold, was the robin swaying on a long branch of ivy. He had followed her, and he greeted her with a chirp. As Mary had skipped toward him, she felt something heavy in her pocket strike against her at each jump. When she saw the robin, she laughed again. In paragraph 3, I read that the robin was swaying on a long branch of ivy and greeted her with a chirp. This helps me imagine what the robin looked like and what he was doing. I also read that Mary skipped toward the robin, and she felt something heavy in her pocket strike against her at each jump. This helps me imagine the weight of something in her pocket and how this feels. Let's continue with paragraph 4 and 5. You showed me where the key was yesterday, she said. You ought to show me the door today, but I don't believe you know. The robin flew from his swinging spray of ivy onto the top of the wall, and he opened his beak and sang a loud, lovely trill, merely to show off. Nothing in the world is quite as adorably lovely as a robin when he shows off, and they are nearly always doing it. I remember reading in paragraph 5 how the robin flew from his swinging spray of ivy onto the top of the wall as he opened his beak and sang a loud, lovely trill merely to show off. This line helps me imagine what the robin sounded like when he flew off and how proud it was that he wanted to be acknowledged by Mary. All right, boys and girls, let's pause for a moment and reflect and ask ourselves, how did I use my 5 senses in order to visualize and make the story come alive in my mind? What questions did I ask myself as I was reading? Remember, boys and girls, to successfully visualize the steps we took, first we labeled key events. Then we were circling action verbs, vivid adjectives, and descriptions related to the 5 senses. And we asked ourselves, what do I see in my mind? Great job today. All right, guys, that wraps up today's 5th grade reading lesson. Keep reading. I will see you again next time. Bye.